Good morning, everyone. Welcome along to the Blood Red Morning Bulletin. I'm your host for this week, Patrick Smith, and I'm joined by Liverpool.com's Dave Comerford today. Dave, how's things?
Very good. Obviously, after that win yesterday, I think it's a great way to just start the week thinking back to that result and that unbelievable turnaround, really.
Yeah, I don't know about you, and I don't know about our viewers as well, but I just can't stop watching. I've probably seen it about 20 times already this morning, let alone how many times I watched it yesterday. Unbelievable result for Liverpool. Of course, I'm sure you're all well aware that stunning comeback victory at Newcastle, snatching the game, snatching the 3 points right at the death with Darwin Núñez. And there's obviously going to be so much reaction and talk to all the obvious talking points, such as Núñez and the red card, etc., etc. But I thought we'd use this morning, Dave, to take a little alternative look at some other points people may not be going over. Of course, we do have the Liverpool Echo's Blood Red podcast going out later today with all the reaction from Ian Doyle and Paul Gorse, Joe River, etc. Everyone should make sure you subscribe to Blood Red so you don't miss that one. But for now, Dave, let's take a look at some other points, shall we? I want to start with Wataru Endo. He was brought in as this number 6 for Liverpool. Started straight away. Came on at Bournemouth. Came on against Bournemouth. Started his first, proper game he couldn't really have started in after signing 12 hours before the Bournemouth match. But he started at Newcastle. How do you think he got on in his first 60 minutes or so in a Liverpool shirt starting a match? I know, again, it was difficult against Bournemouth because they were down to 10, and they were down to 10 pretty quickly in this one. But how do you think he got on in those circumstances?
I think he did fine, to be honest. I don't think it was particularly good or particularly bad from him. I think, like you say, the key point is that, what was it, half an hour into the game, just under, when Van Dijk got sent off. I mean, it's, he's then on till like the 58th minute, I think. So he's spending a lot of time again, with 10 men, which obviously is a completely different dynamic. And Klopp was asked about that after the game. And he was just laughing to himself, thinking, whenever as a player had to make their first 2 appearances, including their full debut for a team, when they're getting a man sent off, in both matches, it's a incredibly bizarre situation. And again, you always have to wait quite a while before you can judge a new signing. I think in this case, you have to wait even longer because Endo has been plunged into, 2 of the most difficult scenarios, really. And I think in those circumstances, he's done okay. I mean, I don't think he was part of the problem that Liverpool had yesterday. One thing that's interesting, I mean, he's come out and said, I think that he can be better on the defensive side of the ball. He's publicly admitted that after the game yesterday. So I mean, you hear that and you're like, maybe a bit of humility, but also, I think he knows that it's going to be a process for him to kind of adapt. And don't get me wrong, I still don't think that he's kind of the solution as the first choice in that position. But again, I think it's far too early to kind of level any criticisms or also, get too deep into any praise, really. I think got to withhold judgment, but yesterday I think was probably reasonably solid overall, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I don't want to be too harsh on our judgments here, and it's such a small appearance pool to judge him off, and there's such weird appearances as well. But do you think he is enough cover for Liverpool going into the season as a number 6? Would you be okay with that, or do you think they definitely need to get someone else in as well as him?
I think they absolutely need someone else, to be honest. I mean, you can look at it and say, personnel-wise, you have Endo, Bajcetic, Thiago when he's fit. I mean, maybe that's okay, but just in terms of quality, I think... I mean, again, and we've not seen Endo for a sustained period in normal circumstances, so I'm not going to kind of bash him by any means. I just think from what we know about the player, his kind of background and, the fact that he's, come from Stuttgart at the age of 30, I mean, it does kind of just scream kind of reliable backup to me. Klopp compared him to James Milner. That's what Milner was, really, for the most part in his final years at Anfield. So I don't think the way to, fill the defensive midfield issue is to get another James Milner. I think you need another specialist in that position. It's not really an area of the team where you can afford to kind of, just throw someone in as a bit of a stopgap. I think it's arguably the most important position in the side, and you could make that case. So, yeah, I think what Liverpool do in the next few days in that area is going to have a big say in what their ceiling is this year. If they go with Endo, to me, they're basically a team who's going to be competing for that top 4 or top 5, as it will be now, kind of right in the thick of that battle, I'd say, for that Champions League spot. If they get someone elite in that position, if they can maybe, find the time to get centre back into, which again, you're pushing it a little bit, then I think they can start to look upwards, maybe towards Manchester City. But yeah, I think definitely. You can definitely argue over which is a bigger priority, centre back or defensive midfield. But I think I'd still be very much looking to strengthen in that position.
No, we'll be moving on to centre back shortly, of course. But as you say, they're in defensive midfield. They do need a specialist in. I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, it's baffling that we're here this last week of the window, basically, and they've still not brought a specialist defensive midfielder in. I didn't watch the game, but I saw a match of the day. They highlighted it, how well Pellegrini played for Fulham in their draw at Arsenal. I know he scored the late equalising goal, but aside from that, an amazing performance by all accounts. And that's the sort of player I think Liverpool need to just go for. That look, the market is skewed. You're going to be overpaying for any player. I mean, check Decore at 70 million. Pellegrini, I think Fulham wants 70, 80 for him. You're going to have to pay it. There's no way around it, really. If you need a 6, you're going to have to spend that money. And I think Pellegrini may be the one. I know some fans may be questioning that at 28. Is he the right level? But as I said, it's a really weird market in that position. I think they need to get someone. And as good as Endo was and as solid as he was, I don't think he's the one to take Liverpool back to being title contenders, unfortunately. I mean, it's very hard to judge him this early. He may come a lot better, but I wasn't exactly hugely impressed. But then it's hard to be by number 6, I suppose. And you've got Bajcetic coming back from injury as well. Thiago's coming back. He could slot in there potentially. So maybe not all doom and gloom, but yeah, agree with you. They definitely need to get a 6 in. But also, I think they need a centre-half in. Let's talk about the defensive situation, shall we? So, Ibrahim Konate, once again, injured, of course. Joel Matip came in. Let's start with Matip, Dave. How do you think he coped in that right centre-back role? Because there was a lot of apprehension, I'd say, before the match when people saw him starting there. How do you think Matip coped in this new system?
Well, to be honest, I wanted Gomez to start during the week when obviously it became clear that Konate was going to be unavailable because of injury. So when that happened, I was a bit like, I was going to be apprehensive either way, I think, whether it was Gomez or Matip, just on the fact that they were that they struggled quite a lot last season. But to be honest, I don't really think Matip put a foot wrong in the game. It was slightly unusual, I think, just in the sense that Liverpool were expecting to commit a lot of players forward during the match and, really be brave like they normally are. But then when they have a man sent off, they've got to basically kind of sit behind the ball a little bit, just focus on being compact, look for opportunities on the counter attack. And I think that suited Matip a bit. He's not having to cover the same amount of ground, but in terms of how he and Gomez defended in their own penalty area, I thought they were both really, really good, and they deserve their credit for that. Obviously, next week against Aston Villa, if Konate's got a muscle injury, I'd be surprised if he's back for that one. And with an international break coming up, it kind of feels like you just kind of don't take the chance and give him the extra couple of weeks to recover. So then they're going to have to, do it again next week against Villa. And hopefully yesterday wasn't just a flash in the pan in that regard and they can perform solidly on Sunday too. But yeah, I thought Matip, credit where it's due, was very solid yesterday, albeit in different circumstances that we would have envisaged before the game.
I'm inclined to disagree with you there, but I think because as solid as Matip was, I think every single time the ball came near him or every time he had a defensive decision, it was almost very last ditch. And he did well, as you say, to cope with the system. But long term, he can't be the one that you start there for Liverpool. Look, I love Joel Matip. He's a cult here at Liverpool. He's been amazing for the past 4 or 5 years or so. But I think now if you're playing this new formation, you need to have pace on that right side. As you say, I'd have 100% gone Joe Gomez there. I thought Gomez was actually pretty solid when he came on. I think he almost outperformed Matip. But in that right-sided role, Matip's just too slow now. He is getting older. He hasn't got the legs to cope in that position. And, we see with Liverpool's new shape, teams do attack that left-hand side. They do get a lot of joy down there. That's happened a lot. But they were particularly getting loads yesterday against Matip. I don't think he can be the one to start there, but he probably is going to have to start this weekend at Aston Villa. Or maybe it's Jarell Quansah going to get a go, Dave. He's been an amazing player for the academy, hasn't he? He had a great loan spell, Bristol Rovers last season. Do you think Quansah could maybe step in now and take over from Matip as that sort of replacement centre-back? It was a pretty decent showing from yesterday, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was surprised when he came on. I was very impressed by how he actually did. I think Klopp was as well. I think Trent was very glowing in his praise after the match as well. And Klopp had said in his press conference before the game that he regarded Quansah as one of his options in that position for this season. So I think maybe he does fill that kind of Nat Phillips role in the centre-back ranks. I mean, we've only got a few days of the window left now, and it kind of feels like we've been waiting all summer for something to happen on the Nat Phillips front. But hopefully, they do sort of something for him just for the good of his career, really.
Yeah.
And I think if that happens, I think that means Quansah will stay just for numbers. And can he overtake Matip this season? I think probably too early to say. We'll have to see a bit more of him. Maybe he's a player that features in the Europa League. You know, we'll have to see what kind of draw Liverpool get. And obviously, Klopp will have to make that judgment because it'll be a big step up. You know, you mentioned where he was playing last season in the Football League. So, yeah, it's still early days for him. And I think there's no question at all that you kind of delay any transfer or anything like that because you've got Quansah and you look at him as a solution. I just don't think that'll suffice just because we've not, as much as he was solid yesterday, we've not seen remotely enough of him at the first team level to kind of be putting that level of faith in him. But certainly promising, and let's see what happens in the next few weeks. I think it won't be long before the Carabao Cup starts for Liverpool. And I think that would be a game, for example, where he was nailed on to play. So let's see how he does in those kind of games and whether his involvement can kind of ramp up over the course of the season.
No, I was really impressed by him in pre-season. I've not seen too much of him before that, but you know, out of Gomez and Matip and Quansah in pre-season, the three of them typically played together. I think Quansah was the most impressive, to be honest. He's got that big physicality, quick, decent skill set on the ball as well. I think he could suit definitely that right-sided role, maybe with the central role. But of course, Dave, the main point here, as you say there, the window is about to close, and Joe Gomez slotted yesterday on the left-hand side. Look, maybe I'm being a bit too harsh on Matip and Gomez because they actually, the one goal they conceded against Newcastle was a bit of a freak accident from Trent, basically. Aside from that, they didn't really concede too many chances. I must have been a bit harsh on Matip, maybe, but Gomez came in on that left-hand side. He does look a bit unnatural there, Dave, doesn't he? I know he played left-back before, like 6 years ago, probably now, but they desperately need to get that left-footed, left-sided centre-back in because this weekend without Virgil van Dijk, they're going to be very, very struggling down that left-hand side, aren't they? Robertson's going to have a lot to do, I think, without a natural left-footer, left-sided centre-half inside him, isn't he?
Yeah, I think he probably is. And I mean, the frustration with Van Dijk is that, I mean, I think it was a clear-cut red card yesterday, but the frustration is that he'd been so good, I think, in Liverpool's first two games. So to lose him now feels like even more of a blow. Even if yesterday he just made a mistake and he pays for it. And yeah, I mean, the need for a centre back is clear, to be honest. And the Konate injury on, you know, whatever day it was last week, I think has really hammered that home at this stage. And Liverpool need to go out and do something about it. The worry for me would be, you know, if they don't, that you're kind of risking a situation similar to, you know, the 2021 season when obviously. Yeah. I mean, I doubt it'd be that bad. Obviously, that was a complete, you know, freak show, really. But in this particular case, you've got, you know, 3 of the 4 options that Liverpool have are injury prone. I think there's question marks still over most of them as well, just based on how last season went. It was pretty clear, I mean, going into the window, that you clearly needed another body in that position. I mean, the fact that we're sitting here on the 28th of August, still discussing the need and there not being anyone kind of imminently coming in, is a worry. And I think Liverpool would, you know, they're taking not only a big risk, but also they're going to incur some pretty big criticism when this kind of inevitably serves as an issue at different points throughout the season. So, yeah, I think it's really important to do something. As much as, you know, Gomez and Matip were really good yesterday, and I think we should take anything away from them. I just think Liverpool need kind of, they need that, and they need to sign another Konate, really, for that area, I think. And whether they can find one at this stage of the market, I don't know. But I'd like to think that they're certainly active on that front at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, you'll be paying a premium this close to the deadline as well. That's the thing as well that is even more baffling, the fact it's taken this long. You're going to wind up paying more in the last 3 or 4 days of the windows. It's unbelievable, Dave, that we are here on the 28th of August still having this conversation. And as you say, it was a bit of a freak show back in 2021, I think it was, wasn't it, 2020? But Liverpool are only 2 or 3 injuries away from that. And this new formation, I think, is going to lead to more injuries because the centre-backs are being stretched far more than they were in the old shape. And if you've got, say, Joel Matip playing that right-hand side, maybe Joe Gomez, both have built up more injuries in the past 3 years. They've got that pretty poor injury record. They're older. I mean, it could be an absolute recipe for disaster. I really think it could be. So they need to get a centre-back in. More priority, I think, than that defensive midfielder, as much as they need one of them. You've got Bajcetic and Thiago who could step in. Let's say, God forbid, that, you know, Van Dijk and Konate both get long-term injuries. You centre back to the season and Matip, Gomez, Quansah, Nat Phillips, probably that's why he's still not gone yet. I mean, it's, a couple injuries away, David, it could be disaster again. But let's be positive, shall we? Hopefully, we're back on the show tomorrow, a Wednesday and Thursday, with some transfer news. Let's really hope that something happens. We have an actual transfer to talk about because, as we've said, this is a pretty worrying sign heading into the season. But, of course, Liverpool 7 points from 3. Not all doom and gloom just yet. But for now, for myself, Patrick Smith and Dave Cumberford, thank you so much for joining us. Back here again tomorrow at 10 a.m. and every weekday. Make sure you check us out here at the Blood Red channel and, of course, all the written content over at liverpool.com.